The video. If they don't like the tone of your channel, a sudden violated the rules. It's just garbage, stupid standards. It just has to do with who complains and who produces the video. If they don't like the tone of your channel, you're more likely to be discriminated against. Simple as that. Their discretion, their personal opinion. No democracy here, no fair trials, no anything. Just shit from corporations that we shouldn't let be running the internet. They clearly can't run a video site honestly and with integrity. Why are you letting them run the internet? They're deciding what you see on the internet. They're deciding what you can get to. The same people who decide what hate speech is. Same morons who are controlling Google search engine. That should bother you. Left, right, shouldn't matter what side you're on. It should bother you that a corporation is going to decide what's okay in America. Yeah, fuck that. Anyway, so enough of the Google rag. So just explaining, there will not, probably. I might post a video if it's, if I make a video that's just uncontroversial, then maybe I'll post it. Maybe I'll post a couple of art videos just because I did start to paint again. Don't know if it's going to last, but I like it. Yeah, it's not really as realistic as I was going for, but certain charm to it, I think, and such. So I will post progress as we progress along, painting and such. So I might as well show this. This is the Inmendham videos channel. Maybe I'll change this icon. Yeah, it's not the best picture of me. Anyway, maybe I'll put the lion there. Anyway, so yeah, you can see the video is still here, the badge of disreputability, something like that. And then the last video was Google is evil, and really wasn't about that, actually. I don't know why I titled it that exactly, because that really there's a lot more subjects in there than that. So I will say this is this stupid bullshit event, where Baldy Cat's physics, kind of a guy who debunks flat earthers. He's not even a physicist. He's a school teacher. Arranged to do a debate, me and him. I went through the trouble of harassing him into it and going through the logistics and jumping through the hoops. And he bailed out at the last minute, pulling the Holocaust card, claiming that I've said things that are just unacceptable. And apparently the unacceptable part isn't saying millions of Jews were killed by bigotry. No, you have to say millions of Jews were fed into gas chambers, and you have to go through all that story. And that story has practical limitations. It's plausible. Okay? It's got real plausibility issues, and they just don't want to pay any attention. And it parallels the physics argument in so many ways, because they just keep saying they have all this evidence, and there's no other reasonable thing to believe. And then particles have ESP, or we have to create whole new multiverse. And it's only brought up because the troll, told Baldy Cats I'm a Holocaust denier because I don't believe everything they believe. And again, that was revealed in the video. What the issue was, and clearly they think the Holocaust is about gas chambers. I think the Holocaust is about bigotry and murder.
Well, hello, welcome back, everyone. So the first part of the video, like that clip, was basically Inmendham saying that his channel got flagged because he was a quote-unquote Holocaust denier. Even though he takes a different approach, there are things about him that are kind of Holocaust denial. He does admit that it was a racist, bigoted movement, but he seems to deny all the video and historical evidence that we have of gas chambers and stuff. I don't understand why he denies that, but I don't think he even knows that that's the reason why his channel or a video got flagged. I don't know if he knows, but he is now afraid to upload videos because of a strike. So hopefully he decides to continue making content, because I am enjoying doing these philosophical debates. And this one, he brings up Friedrich Nietzsche. So that is why the video is entitled Antinatalist, Nihilist Part 2. What would Friedrich Nietzsche do? Let's start with his argument.
Has been evolving from what was originally an ethical position one took from a pessimist appreciation of existence.
So again, he's arguing that somehow everybody has to be derived energy, or everybody has to be Schopenhauer, or who knows what Nietzsche's stance would have been if he had to actually be forced to say yes or no to pressing the go button. But clearly, the argument is just about life being either futile, or the argument is it's substantially negative, that the cost is insanely high, and that this isn't about just being futile, making a mess, cleaning up a mess. No, the argument is there's a huge mess that's never cleaned up. You never undo it. The worst horrors experienced will never be compensated for by some perfect little dance some human does.
Well, Nietzsche's stance, we can't answer for him because he's dead. So we can't approach him with this antinatalist perspective because he's not alive. However, he did produce things in this sort of ballpark, and things like Beyond Good and Evil, or the philosophical story that he told about approaching an entity, and it says you can face death and whatever that is, whether it be the judgment gates, heaven and hell, whether that be nothing. Whatever death is, you can either approach it or continue to live life or repeat life with all of its folly and blunder, as well as the prizes of it as well. Would you consider this entity to be an angel or a demon? Now, the real, I think, thing about this sort of exercise is to analyze it. I don't really think that it is neither, that the reason why it's called Beyond Good and Evil is because the entity is neither good nor bad. The entity could be allocated to nothing more than death. He's asking, basically, well, yes, since life is full of pain, would you rather face death, or would you rather experience pain so you can experience joy? Or is it not even worth it? And Friedrich Nietzsche's answer was quite often that in order to gain any kind of good experience in life, one must endure an abundant amount of pain. A lot of the ways that Nietzsche compared life was to that of like the roots of a flower. He engaged in botany. He would go to like a what is it called? An arboretum. He'd pull a flower out of a pot and he'd say, well, you see, life is kind of like this. It looks ugly underneath. It's just full of all these problems and mess and chaos. But from all the chaos comes something beautiful, which would be the flower. Friedrich Nietzsche was actually quite obsessed with this idea of pain being a part of life, that no life was possible without tears. In fact, it was well known that he had a lot of physical ailments, that he had some diseases he had to deal with. Despite this, he would climb a mountain, and it would cause him a lot of physical exertion and a lot of pain, but to him the pain was worth it because it gave him this sort of solitude and peace, and the view on top of the mountain, it made the pain worthwhile. This was Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical approach, and also tends to be mine, is that in order to have pain or pleasure at all, there must be, as it was said by Matt Dillahunty, there must be an observer. Well, from my perspective, pain is sort of a way of gauging that you are alive. I would not trade the painful moments in my life to not exist at all, to never experience anything at all. Yeah, the universe doesn't give a shit about you. Yeah, there's no life after death. It's a cease of consciousness or cognizance, or to be self-aware of one's own cognizance. That's true. But I think it's worth the price of admission. I know that death is inevitable, and that nothing I do really amounts to anything. Eventually, the universe will no longer be able to sustain life of any kind, so what does any of it matter? Well, it matters in the moment. I guess it's the whole philosophy of live for today. And don't worry about tomorrow. I suppose that's a very hedonistic way of looking at it, but I think hedonism comes with a lot of responsibility. Actually, believe it or not, Friedrich Nietzsche would be against me being hedonistic. Friedrich Nietzsche was against hedonism because he felt that it was just another way of trying to ignore reality. I'm not so much against ignoring reality and escapism as Nietzsche was, but to me, that's part of the experience of being cognitively aware of one's own existence, is to be able to experience different states of mind, and you can do this through mind-altering substances. You can do this through things that stimulate the pleasure center of the brain. Without an observer, though, there is no pain, true, and there is no pleasure. There is no gratification of any kind or any of the shades of gray in between. And I think that was pretty much Nietzsche's stance, is that in order to live life, you must be able to endure some level of pain, because it comes with the package. It comes with the territory. You can't escape it. And I think it's interesting how Inmendham dichotomizes these. It's almost like this whole good and evil concept that doesn't really exist. It's something that, the concept of things being just or fair is a very human trait. It's something that we created, we invented. It's just kind of like what I said about the which is the protagonist, which is the antagonist. When two predators meet each other and they both need to feed their cubs or their baby, their children, their offspring. This is not an intelligent design. This is just how chaotic the universe is and how it works. It's a series of random circumstances that inevitably lead to something. And I don't think either predator is neither the antagonist nor the protagonist in the situation. They're just doing what they need to do. They just do what they do. And I don't think they even think about it in terms like we as human beings do, of whether it's righteous, of whether it's fair, whether it's unfair, whether it's just or unjust. Like I said, that is a human concoction, because we like things to be what we call fair. We like things to have a sense of balance to them. But that is not how the rest of the universe works. That is not how nature works. That is what we desire as human beings. Unfortunately, we have the capability of analyzing beyond any other animal in the animal kingdom to come up with such a concept. So that is our burden to bear. However, I don't think animals wander around thinking like, man, life is just full of pain. I wish I'd never been born. I don't think they think that way. That's a very human perspective. And so I think making a choice not to have offsprings is absolutely, feel free to make your choice on that. You don't have to have an offspring. I have made the choice not to have an offspring, but not because I will pose myself as an antinatalist. It's because having an offspring is a lot of responsibility, and I don't know that I'm that I'm in a position to take on that responsibility. I'm saying I don't want to. And I think that in and of itself is a responsible decision to make, is saying like, look, I don't know if I'm the right person to do this job. And that's not a position of antinatalism, but it's also not in a position of pronatalism. It's in a position of pro-choice, of bodily autonomy, of what you want to do with your life or how you want to live your life is up to you. I don't know that Nietzsche would have been... antinatalist or pro-natalist. I think it's very much in the realm of what does nature do? Well, part of nature is what nature does is that biological organisms procreate. This is what they do. They just do it. Human beings do it accidentally too. We haven't risen above that. There's still that neurological itch to want to compete in the mating pool to fuck. And whether the intention is to produce an offspring or not seems to rarely matter.
Substantially negative. That the cost is insanely high. And that this isn't about just being futile. Making a mess, cleaning up a mess. No, the argument is there's a huge mess that's never cleaned up. You never undo it. The worst horrors experienced will never be compensated for by some perfect little dance some human does.
Well, I don't know about that. That seems to be a subjective standpoint, to say that this is all just a mess that somebody has to clean up, that it's extremely, and I'm going to use the word unfair, because that's almost what it sounds like he's saying. It's almost like you're saying that life isn't worth it because it's so unfair. And as I illustrated before, the concept of fair and unfair seem to be a very humanistic trait. It seems to be extremely subjective. And if you look out, if we look at nature as a model, because where else are we going to draw a model from if not from nature? We have nothing else to draw a model from other than nature. What do we see in nature? Is there this sense of fair or unfair? Is there this sense of just or injustice? No, there's not. So when it said that there's this giant mess and it's not worth it, it's not worth the price of admission, and then there's always something to clean up, that sounds like that's a subjective position. That sounds like it is a position that some people will take and not everyone will take. Whether you're an atheist, amoralist, nihilist, or a moralist nihilist, it seems to be irrelevant to that. This is a subjective opinion as to whether or not you think it is a giant mess that is not worth it. That is opinion. That is subjective. It is not empirically substantiated with facts and evidence. You could draw a lot of conclusions from empirical data, facts, and evidence. You could take things that happen in the wild, animals mauling each other to death, eating little baby things. You could use things of humans going to war with each other and all the travesty and turmoil and stuff that creates. But yet, we're still here. Humanity hasn't come to an abrupt halt and said, this was so tragic, we're just going to stop making children and people because war, or because famine, or because tragedy. So there must be a constituent out there that says, despite the fact that life is meaningless, despite the fact that we die, there's still some kind of impulse to continue going on. And I find it interesting. He has a video about what cognizance is, or consciousness, awareness. And I would agree with him on it. But the thing I find interesting is that if we agree that this brain of ours is just, all it's doing is interpreting information through our sensory organs, why hasn't it ever crossed these people's minds that perhaps the reason we keep going is because we're not some sort of intelligent design. we are the causality of random events, and we are a biological organism that just does what biological organisms do. which is they appropriate and they keep going and they do this. So yes, pain is a part of life, and it's like, let me pass you a tissue for your tears. Let me coddle you and cradle you and tell you it's going to be okay, even when it's not. It's not going to be okay. No life is possible without tears. And I don't know what to tell you, sweetie. And this is what I'm saying. Like, maybe you don't go full out into hedonism, because that's usually bad. That you'll end up with something worse off than the nihilistic attitude you have now. But just a little bit. So, try tripping on LSD or some mushrooms and change your perspective a little bit. And maybe that'll help. I don't know. But the point that I was getting at is that, like, I don't like saying that we're programmed, but it is kind of like an evolutionary programming that we do these things. So I don't know what to tell you. I sort of lost my train of thought. That sucks. But yeah, I think people are still just continuing to do what it is that people do. And I was starting to get off track because there was an argument I was thinking that transhumanists make, which I prescribed as something deeply dogmatic. But I don't think that that's a reason to become antinatalist. I think it's subjective. That's subjective.
Always had within it one major flaw. The first time I read Benatar's book, I appreciated his argument and accepted the conclusion that was only because I was already consciously a pessimist, which derived from nothing much more important than personal dissatisfaction with the world, my own life, and life in general.
Well, those are all different things, aren't they? Disappointment with the human race is one thing. Recognition that the life game itself, like the Olympics, you could realize, hey, there's winners, but look at all the losers, and look at all the disappointment. The number of tears of sadness is so much greater than the number of tears of joy for the participants. It really is sort of a tragedy, not something for everybody to clap and celebrate. A bunch of people are harmed, yay! A bunch of losers were created, yay! Doesn't seem.
All right, so now I think I cut the video off a little, but he said that it's irrational. And the thing that I find interesting about this is that I've observed sort of the same thing. I've thought, when we celebrate winners, think about all the people who lost and how many people's dreams have been shattered. But again, this is part of life. As many dreams as I have that have been shattered, there are times where I win, and that feels good. So first of all, though, when it comes to like competitive things, I think this is something that humans do to satisfy a primitive urge or a primitive desire to compete. And so we make up these little games to test physical and mental endurance. And, obviously then there's a winner and then there's a bunch of losers. And if you equate that to a tragedy because you lost at something or because you aren't as good at something as you thought, I think that's a gross oversimplification. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of your life because you're not as good at something as you thought. It could be a point that if you want to be good at it in your life before you die and go to the eternal nothing, then you need to strive harder to become good at that thing. or find something else that you are good at, that you too take pride and joy in through your duration of this life. And know this, that this is the one shot you have to experience anything that life has to offer, and life is that of being cognitively aware of one's own existence. And in that time, if you do not spend it wisely trying to, see what the mountains look like, the Rocky Mountains, the Red Mountains, the plateaus, what the ocean looks like, experience different sexual partners to realize, if you only have sex with one person, you won't know this, that sex with different people is different. And that doesn't mean that it has to be emotionally detached. It could be. It could be emotionally attached. You could have lovers throughout your life where they each have various significant meaning to you. And this is what I mean, is this is your one and only chance to feel that. You won't be able to when you're gone. You won't be able to. You won't be able to know what pain is. You won't be able to know that. You won't be able to know that feeling of loss. You won't know that. What gets me, what bothers me, is that you have, and maybe some of you will not see him this way, but Inmendham is an intellectual thinker, and it would pain me to think that he is flipping burgers at a McDonald's or Burger King or, a fast food chain, or working retail or something of that requires no thinking at all. Just, do as the finger says, be a cog in a machine kind of thing, which seems to be what a lot of people are doing nowadays. Things like philosophy don't have a lot of monetary value in today's society like they did a long time ago. And this is something that bothers the hell out of me, is that you've got intellectual people doing things that they're not really suited to do. And that's due to the lack of value that society has placed on it. I don't know what you can do. That's a societal issue. That's an argument you make towards society, though. This is not a nihilist, antinatalist argument. That is an argument that I would say something is wrong in society. Society is still trying to perpetuate this idea that we're these magical celestial angel babies that are capable of being above human being or human standards. And that's where I've said, and if you go way back in my videos, there's at one point I've said this, that maybe we need to take time to step back and understand the psychological well-being of the animal that we are. And we don't do this. We still continue to perpetuate this idea that when we're going through bereavement or a mourning or grieving process, it is only supposed to take you a week or so. If it takes longer than that, you're not normal. Now, fuck you. That's bullshit. Or as somebody in the comment section had mentioned to me once, is this normalization. And I do think that that's part of what goes on in society, and I think that that's something that does need to stop, is because we are not, well, I mean, as much as I say we are not all the same, there are things that are intrinsically human that we do understand. And I brought this up with a song, I think it was by Dark Corridor, that said, no, it wasn't Dark Corridor, Dark Rooms, where he said, did you sleep in, what was it? Are you running late? Did you sleep too much from all the awful dreams that felt real enough? The fact that that is true for so many people, that it got into a song, and it's that line itself is so relatable, tells me that yes, this is one of those things that many people can relate to on a large scale, but society is ill-equipped to deal with it. You look at the way companies operate when interacting with their employees. You look at how society interacts with people who go through things like that, and they say stupid things like, "We'll just perk up," as if it's that easy. When it's like, you're not paying attention. Pain is a part of life, and I think that maybe we should do something to have society accommodate to that, because anything else would be antithetical to the human experience. And actually, if we were to accommodate to it, you would actually get probably a better production out of human beings, instead of just trying to hide it and pretend like it's not there, that it's not real. I'm going to, this isn't the full thing. His videos are quite long. He goes on quite some rants. I think this video, I will leave a link to this video that I'm countering these arguments on in the description below, so you can watch the full thing. It's an hour and 13 minutes and 1 second long. So I was just kind of taking snippets and responding to them as they come to me. So I'll leave a link to it. Maybe I'll continue in on this video. He has got plenty of them. They're all like an hour, 2 hours long. I like going on this track because I don't know if philosophy is basically the art of debate. What I'm trying to do is trying to give an alternative approach rather than pro-natalism or anti-natalism, but being somewhere in between, of saying like, it's okay to make the decision not to have kids, but it's also okay to make the decision to have kids, and that not a single individual person or group of people can make a decision on behalf of the entirety of the globe, all species, or one species, that life is not worth living just because there is nothing after death. That is a subjective, this is the argument that I make, that is a subjective standpoint that not everyone shares. And that some people do think or do have the subjective stance that the pain is fine, because with pain also comes pleasure, or enlightenment, or some kind of reward. And Friedrich Nietzsche did argue that, actually. He did. So it's a shame he won't be, hopefully he decides to continue producing content, because I'm enjoying kind of debating this. So let me know what you think in the comments section below. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. And don't be a dick. Don't go around like flagging people's channel because you disagree with them. That's fucking rude. I'd say if you really don't like the person's content, and if you find them abhorrent, don't support their channel. Don't like their video. Don't even dislike their video. Disliking their video still helps them out in the algorithm. Don't watch their content. Don't like, don't dislike. Just stay away. You don't have to fuck up all the creative, artistic stuff they've done over the years just because you don't like a stance that they have. Yeah, I mean, as simple as that. But let me know, like I said, all that other stuff, and support, unlike in Inmendham, choices, and not one's ability to impose one's will on others against their own will.